Heart to Heart Catholic Media Ministry, in association with Bellarmine Jesuit Retreat House, presents Eucharistic Encounters, Advent and Christmas reflections on the gift of the Eucharist. Today we celebrate the feast of the Holy Family, and we light the white candle of love. Our prayer is that we might become a more loving, reconciling community, that we might become holy families of faith, hope, and love. A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Colossians. Brothers and sisters, put on, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, heartfelt compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, bearing with one another and forgiving one another. If one has a grievance against another, as the Lord has forgiven you, so must you also do. And over all these, put on love, that is, the bond of perfection. The word of the Lord. This final week of Eucharistic Encounters, we have just 3 more audio reflections to share with you. On Monday, Father Joe Laramie tells us about his soul-stirring experiences this past summer in Indianapolis at the Eucharistic Congress. There, he experienced a call to childlike wonder of the Word becoming flesh and dwelling among us. On New Year's Eve, Father Radmar Howe recounts that while he was a Jesuit novice, he met Jesus in Seattle, in the person of Carol, a special needs adult woman. Carol's joyful love and gratitude for the Eucharist reminds him to this day to come to the altar table with a joyful, expectant, childlike heart. And we conclude our series on January 1st by celebrating the solemnity of the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Mother of God. Sister Alicia Torres, an award-winning chef, reflects on how Mary's yes to God's plan calls us into holy adoration of the Word becoming flesh. On this Feast of the Holy Family, I'm reminded that it was 30 years ago today that Cardinal Bernardin flew to Philadelphia to be reconciled with Stephen Cook, the young man who had accused the cardinal of sexually abusing him years previously in Cincinnati. I spent almost a decade researching, writing, and rewriting this story. I was so deeply moved by this real-life drama of betrayal and reconciliation. I thought it might become a movie someday. Then I thought it would become a stage play. Finally, I ended up producing a 30-minute documentary for Heart to Heart that tells this story in the words of those who knew the Cardinal best. For those who are interested, there's a link at the end of this video to this documentary entitled Courage to Forgive. What was so remarkable about this reconciliation? Cardinal Bernardin was the first bishop to commission a thorough study of the issue of sexual abuse by clergy. And the Archdiocese of Chicago became an early model of bringing transparency and accountability to the issue. This put him on the radar of some who wanted to discredit the Church and to shame him. On November 11th, 1993, Stephen Cook, a young man then living in Philadelphia, accused Cardinal Bernardin of sexually abusing him while he was a seminarian in Cincinnati. This was the first in modern times that a cardinal of the Catholic Church was accused of such an action. The news spread faster than wildfire across the globe. And for 100 days, Bernardin stood before dozens and dozens of reporters proclaiming his innocence, telling his story. Some believed him, some did not. Finally, Stephen Cook recanted his accusation in February 1994.
Since I cannot be sure my memories of abuse by the Cardinal are accurate, I can no longer proceed in good conscience. I have therefore dismissed all claims against Cardinal Bernardin.
Bernardin immediately held a press conference and stated that he forgave Stephen and held no ill will against him.
I'm very, very grateful that I have been vindicated by a total and voluntary dismissal of the charges brought against me.
But the two had never met since the accusation. And Bernardin knew that even though legally things had been settled, there was still more spiritual work to be done. The cardinal inquired if Stephen was willing to meet with him. It took some time to make the arrangements out of the ever-present eyes of the media, but Cook sent word that he was willing. And so on this day, 30 years ago, the Feast of the Holy Family, Cardinal Bernardin flew to Philadelphia with his good friend, Father Scott Donahue. There at the St. Charles Borromeo Seminary, they met with Stephen Cook and Kevin, a close friend of Stephen's. Stephen apologized for the pain he had caused the cardinal, and Bernardin forgave Stephen and reassured him that he had been praying for Stephen ever since the allegation had been made. He then asked if Stephen would be willing to join him in celebrating the Eucharist together. Stephen balked. He said that he had felt alienated from God and the church for a long time. He even stated that on several occasions he had thrown the Gideon Bible against the wall in anger and frustration. Stephen said that perhaps a simple prayer service would be more appropriate. The cardinal hesitated, unsure of how Stephen would react to what he was about to show him. He reassured Stephen that he wouldn't press the issue, but wanted to show him 2 items he had brought with him. The cardinal then presented Stephen with a Bible that he had personally inscribed to him. Stephen took the Bible, his hands quivering, and pressed it to his heart. His eyes began to brim with tears. Bernardin then took a 100-year-old chalice out of his briefcase and addressed Cook. Stephen, this is a gift from a man I don't even know. He asked me to use it to say Mass for you someday. A moment later came Stephen's tearful reply. Please, let's celebrate Mass now. And so the 4 of them went down to the seminary chapel and there celebrated the Eucharist. The cardinal would later write in his book, The Gift of Peace, that never in his entire priesthood had he witnessed a more profound reconciliation. It was a manifestation of God's love, forgiveness, and healing that he would never forget. The cardinal addressed them in these words, and I quote, "In every family, there are times where there is hurt, anger, or alienation. But we cannot run away from our family. We have only one family. And so after every falling out, we must make every effort to be reconciled. So too, the church is our spiritual family. Once we become a member, we may become hurt or become alienated, but it is still our family. Since there is no other, we must work at reconciliation. That is what we have been doing this very afternoon." Close quote. Stephen Cook and Cardinal Bernardin would remain in touch after that. And after the cardinal's cancer diagnosis, Stephen was one of the first to write him a letter filled with sympathy and encouragement. He had planned to come to visit the Cardinal in Chicago, but Stephen himself became too ill. He died in September 1995, fully reconciled to the Catholic Church. This story of reconciliation has profoundly impacted my life. As I mentioned, I spent 10 years interviewing many of the Cardinal's staff, his friends, and critics alike. I've been drawn to tell this story, perhaps because I myself was sexually abused when I was an infant by a great uncle. Or perhaps because the clergy sex abuse crisis is the worst crisis the Catholic Church has faced in the last 100 years. Or perhaps because my family, like virtually every family I know, has hurts and misunderstandings that are very hard to heal. But this story of Cardinal Bernardin and Stephen Cook fills me with hope that love can indeed open our hearts to forgiveness. Let me close with a recitation of a creed written by the poet, storyteller, theologian, John Shea. The Prayer of Belief, a liturgical creed. We believe that where people are gathered together in love, God is present, and good things happen, and life is full. We believe that we are immersed in mystery, that our lives are more than they seem, that we belong to each other, and to a universe of great creative energies whose source and destiny is God. We believe that God is after us, that He is calling to us from the depth of human life. We believe that God has risked Himself and become man in Jesus. In and with Jesus, we believe that each of us is situated in the love of God, and the pattern of our life will be the pattern of Jesus, through death to resurrection. We believe that the Spirit of peace is present with us, the Church, as we gather to celebrate our common existence, the resurrection of Jesus and the fidelity of God. And most deeply, we believe that in our struggle to love, we incarnate God in the world. And so, aware of mystery and wonder, caught in friendship and laughter, we become speechless before the joy in our hearts and celebrate the sacredness of life in the Eucharist. Amen. Amen. Let's take 1 minute to think about today's Eucharistic encounter. What in this reflection resonates with your own experience of the Eucharist? What do you want to say to the Lord today? And what might the Lord be saying to you?
Thanks for listening to today's Eucharistic Encounter with Father Michael. Tune in tomorrow for a reflection by Father Joe Laramie, S.J. We encourage you to invite your family and friends to experience our Advent series by going to htoh.us/Advent. Our series continues through January 1 with a new Father Michael video each Sunday and an audio reflection each weekday by a new presenter.
From all of us here at Heart to Heart, we wish you a blessed Christmas season, and may God bless your heart and the hearts of all your loved ones.